Welcome back to Afternoon Live. Well, now it's the time for the lady that we've been waiting for all afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kim Wilde. Come on in. How are you, Kim? Nice to see you. Take a few there. Well, I heard that this wonderful musical, Tommy, that you're in, life is going to change now in February next month because that's the end of the run, isn't it?
The run, yeah.
Yeah. Heaven knows what you're going to get up to after that. Could be something very personal, I wonder, but I think I'll ask you that one later on.
Okay.
Yeah. How did it all start for you? Because, of course, we all know that you have very famous parents, and in a sense, is it an advantage or a disadvantage when you're starting off?
I think it was different for me, really, because I have to say it was an advantage in more ways than one, because Kids in America was written by my father Marty and my brother Ricky. So there were sort of hidden, you know, advantages as well as the more obvious ones. And also, at the time, obviously people were sort of comparing me a lot to my dad and saying I was just getting on the bandwagon, perhaps not really believing that I had a real commitment to music.
It's so unfair,
17 years down the line and 8 shows a week in the West End, and I think perhaps you know, I've made my point. But you know, it's to be expected. It always happens to famous offspring.
But I think so very unfair on the offspring of famous people, isn't it?
Well, I think actually it was good for me because it just made me pull my finger out. I became a songwriter, which I wasn't when Kids in America was written, and you know, co-wrote a lot of my hits with Ricky, You Came, and various other songs that I did well. And it kind of spurred me on. You know, it's like it spurred me on, definitely.
Did it? Yeah. So there's an advantage at the end of the road. Yeah. Tommy, what's Tommy about for the benefit of those who haven't seen it?
You know, I always get my words really confused when people ask me what Tommy is about, because for me it works at so many different levels.
Yeah.
And it's a very, you know, it's a tragic story, but you know, it has a really sort of profound sort of effect on me, because it's very much about fame and the rejection of fame.
Yeah.
Not that I'm about to reject fame completely, but it puts it sort of it puts it in the spotlight, and it questions it. It asks lots of questions.
And it's about about a young kid who's deaf.
Yes,
and blind.
he becomes traumatized, and then becomes a big sort of rock star.
We have a tiny clip, so why don't we take a look at that now?
Okay, yeah.
Can you hear me? What do I do mine? That you feel me through my temper. Rise, 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 rise,
And you're playing Tommy's mum in that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Losing my temper with him then.
Not like you, I'm sure.
No.
What about Kids in America, though? You mentioned that earlier. That was the first big hit quite a long time ago. And it got to #2.
Yeah.
Then, of course, after that, you had several other hits that were huge and got to #1. But how did you feel at that moment when, you know, there you were, very nearly at the top, and yet it only made it to #2?
I was just chuffed when it went in at 64. You know?
Really?
You know, I mean, it got to #2, and that was great. But you know, I was just.
You were very young.
I was just so. I felt so fortunate to be able to start my career so young.
Yeah.
You know, I was 20 or 21 or something. 20, I think.
Yeah.
And I just thought, great. Now I can do what I really want to do. I always wanted to sing, and I always wanted to make records, and I felt very much that I was starting my career. I knew it was the beginning of my career, and I just went for it. As soon as I got some reaction, as soon as we had Kids in America in the charts, that was it. I hurtled into my career, and I didn't stop until very recently.
But let's go back, let's stay with Kids in America for a minute, because we've got a tiny clip. Would you like to go back in time? Take a look. Here we go.
Hot shot, give me no problems. Much later, baby, you'll be saying never mind. You know life is cruel, life is never kind. Hard to make a new story, kind hard to gravity glory. We're the kids in America, we're the kids in America. Everybody listen to the music all round.
Did you hear them there? Yeah, the kids in America. Whoa, lovely. But Tommy, I want to go back to that for a special reason, because Tommy has become for you, as I understand it, not just a huge success in your career, but there's a love story as well.
Yeah.
That's where you met him.
Yeah.
How? Poor
I
Hal.
remember,
Famous wife, famous father-in-law, famous mother-in-law. How does he hack it?
Well, he didn't really know much about Kim Wilde because, bless his heart, he's never even been to a pop concert.
What do you have in common?
So he didn't know who Kim Wilde was. So I walk into rehearsal rooms, he hears that there's some chick coming in who's apparently some big pop star, and he's not impressed. And especially because I turned up late for rehearsals the very first day, I was mortified because I hate being late. And he passed comment about it in a rather smug way and sort of, you know, gave me the look up and down, unimpressed, I felt.
Oh,
But you know,
sod.
very no, he was just didn't know me from Adam, and that was fine. I didn't know him, and I didn't know anyone in the cast, and I was very nervous. This was a year ago, really, today, more or less.
A bit of a whirlwind.
Yeah, and then
Love at first sight, maybe.
I think it was, in a way. I mean, I think probably the sound of his voice and the way he looked, and very quickly as the weeks progressed through rehearsals. I mean, I was very focused on rehearsal and Tommy because I'd never done a musical before.
There you are on your wedding day, by the way. You're on screen right now. Look at that, folks. Oh, that really is an one. Oh. You're not going to start to weep, are you?
So I was so focused in on what I was doing because I'd never done a musical, and I was ever so scared and very overwhelmed by the director and by Pete Townsend popping in and by the cast and by their obvious talent.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't sure that I belonged with them. So I was really concentrating on that. But, you know, Hal shone through all the time.
And do you think that in order, because there are lots of people watching today who are probably in the middle of a relationship or the start or they're getting fed up, I mean, my goodness, don't make me think about it, but do you think that you have to be ready to fall in love, or is it that Mr. Right can come along at any stage?
Well, I think it's an interesting question. I certainly feel that, when I met Hal that I was ready to meet Hal. I'd already made a decision in my private life to stop dating.
People like Chris Evans? Oh, come on.
And to stop dating. And that's what I was saying. And I just thought, well, you know, I don't really want to date. If I'm going to fall in love, I'll fall in love, but I don't really want any in between. And I simply wasn't... I just put romance off the agenda just prior to meeting Hal, which is very curious because, of course, just as I put it off the agenda, having had it very much on the agenda, I have to say, almost all through my 20s.
Yeah.
And then suddenly we fell in love.
Well, that's what we hear, and it's hard to know if it's an old wives' tale or not, isn't it? That as soon as you stop searching for Mr. Right, along he comes.
I think it's true. You know, it's an old wives' tale, or it's an old saying. It's a very well-known
It's happened for you,
saying.
certainly, hasn't it?
It's very true.
One last question, Kim. Now, if Tommy comes to an end,
Yes.
and I hear rumours of certain wonderful things happening to it,
Yes.
babies, perhaps, for you and Hal?
Oh, I hope so. Yes, of course. I'd love to have our children imminently.
There we go. That's the next thing we'll probably hear about Kim Wilde. Thank you for coming here
Yes,
today.
thanks very much.
Kim Wilde, ladies and gentlemen. Well, I'm afraid that's it for today. Join us again tomorrow when I'll be joined by top comic Jim Bowen, who'll be giving us some sneak previews of the best new TV. Nutter will be remote control cooking with a viewer in Bristol, and David's here with Catwalk Challenge, the game that puts experts to the test and offers you some fantastic fashion tips. All of that and Vanessa too. That's Wednesday on ITV. Be sure to join us then for another afternoon live. Bye now.